spotting and logging are kind of integral parts of, at least to me, of ham radio and having fun with it, but they aren't super well covered by like the exams, and they aren't also necessarily talked about at club meetings and like how do you get started with a logging program and what do you want one to do and why do you need, or not need, but really want computer logging. And so today we're going to go through, I threw together a couple of slides that I don't like very much, mostly because we can do demos. And I feel like that would be at least as interesting to like actually show how some of this stuff works and talk through that process rather than just giving you slides. So we're going to tempt the demo gods today, and we're just gonna fire up N1MM. Now there are a lot of options for logging software, and in part that's because there is a standard, the Amateur Data Interchange Format, or ADIF, or sometimes just ADI, that is used to share amateur radio log data. And so as long as your program can read and write that, you can have whatever kind of interface you want. So I tend to contest a lot, so I like N1MM Logger. It's geared towards contesters. There are other logging softwares out there for other things. HamRS is often used with mobile sorts of things. It's particularly geared to parks on the air. So if you do a lot of parks on the air, that might be the kind of thing you want. It's built to be mobile friendly. N3FJP Logger is also a pretty widely used logging program. I'm not used to it, and so it always irritates me when I use it. And I'm sure that like 95% of my irritation is just I'm an N1MM person and I'm using that. It's like a Windows person using a Mac or a Mac person using Windows. It's not that you can't do the things, it's just that they don't work the same way that you're expecting them to. And often I'm in a situation where I'm like at field day, and I'm like, I need to do X, Y, or Z. And I press Alt-W to clear out the call, and it doesn't clear out the call. And I don't see my band map. I'm like, I'm sure there's a way to get a band map. And I've been told by people in the last week that yes, you absolutely can get a band map in N3FJP. I just don't know how. And have never been in a position where I have the time to learn it, where I'm also inclined to learn it. So we're going to be talking about N1MM. And the fun thing about this is, because this is full demo mode, I have not used, the N1MM is absolutely fresh install on this computer. So we're just going to kind of walk through how to set all of this stuff up. I brought my radio. We're going to see if we can make this work. So we're going to need to create a new database. So we can just say, okay, let's create a new one. No, seriously, create a new one. Technology. Yep. And eventually, it will create our new database. Oh, this is okay. It's just telling us to set it, that we don't have stuff set that we really are going to need set.
Hey, Bill, are you sharing your screen? I think you might need to do that to record.
Yeah, no, I'm not, and yes, I do. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's asking for a call sign. I strongly recommend you use your call sign for the base name. It makes sense. Yes, seriously, wow. Access, thank you. Hide float meeting controls. Then put in your call. Most of the rest of this stuff is optional, so I'm going to skip it. My ARRL section is Mike November. Hopefully that's enough for it. Close enough. So, okay, we've managed to get that done. No, we're not going to install the new version. Usually you would install the new version. They come out each week on Tuesday. Keep those up to date. But we're not going to bother with that here. So it gives us a couple of different windows. One is this login window. And that is where it keeps all the list of your contacts. So we don't have any yet, so it's a pretty short list. The other window is the entry window. Thank you. Size. Well, yay, resize. And the cool thing about N1MM is that it is really focused. So you have just sort of a few things that you're really interested in. You want the call sign, you want signal reports, and then for general operation, you may want to get their name and any other comments about the contact, like maybe logging what park's on the air park they're from or what state they're from. Or country. Well, country is, you can put the country in there if you want. You don't have to, because if you type in a call, so I think I've been hearing people working like 9 Victor 1 Yankee Sierra a lot recently. I have not been hearing 9 Victor 1 Yankee Sierra, and it makes me really sad to see a bunch of locals working them, and I can't hear. I'm sad. But when you enter that in, it will actually tell you down in the bottom left what DXCC entity you're working. So it tells you, oh, that's in Singapore. So that's kind of handy to have that just right there. Another thing about this is that we're currently in full manual mode. It'll tell us what frequency we're going to be logging contacts to up in the title bar. So 14200, that's in kilohertz. So we'd be looking at 20-meter phone here. It's set to USB. If you want to tell it, well, I'm not actually working there. I want to work on 7.225, or you just type 7225 per kilohertz. Press enter, and now you've switched your band. And so now when you log your next contact, it says, oh, you're on 40 meters. And we can then, it already had us on sideband, and so it tells us we're still LSB. In fact, it switched us from upper to lower sideband. If we wanted to tell it, no, seriously, we're on CW here, you just type CW, and you're switched into CW. You want to go back to LSB, type LSB, and you're back. And so this makes it really easy. If I log a contact here, I work Kilo 0 Bravo Bravo Charlie, and I might log that he was operating from his remote station in Maine. I can press enter. And now the logging program will automatically handle what's my frequency, what's my mode, and what's the date and time in UTC of this contact. So if I were paper logging, I probably would have had to write most of that out. But by using the computer, I don't have to worry about that. All I'm worrying about is call sign, signal report, and any other information that I'm getting. So that keeps me free to think about other things, because just writing out the date a whole bunch of times or writing out the frequency a lot is kind of a thing. But it doesn't take that long of doing this, particularly if you're just responding to stations that are calling CQ, before typing in your frequency before every contact gets really old. And so what if there were some better way we could like use computers and modern technology? So we have a full demo with a rig. I brought a little bit of an antenna. Again, we're going to tempt the demo gods, and we're going to just do this on the fly. So you can go into your config and you configure your ports, mode control, and WIN key. Okay, we're going to guess that this is going to end up on COM4. It might be something else. It's probably on COM4. We are going to tell it it is an FT857. And we are going to set it for 9600 8N2. 9600 8N2 DTR. We want CW. Yes, push to talk. Okay. We tell it to use that for CW. And say okay. And then we cross our fingers that this is going to work. Iridium PSK is not valid. Okay. Well, we're not doing Iridium PSK at the moment. There's additional things that you have to set up for that. But you'll notice we are now at 443.175 FM, which in fact matches what the front panel of my radio says. And if I cycle through a few bands, there we go. Okay. So now we have the radio and the computer talking to each other. So now as I spin that dial, it'll log contacts according to the information that's coming out of my radio. And that's saving me a lot of time, because especially if I'm just spinning the dial, I don't have to worry about my frequency. As long as I see that they're still connected, and it will complain at me if they aren't connected anymore. I just log away and spin the dial. But what if I think, oh, it's time to move up to the 20 meters? Well, I can still type in my frequency that I want to go to. So maybe there's a good park on the air at 14,325 USB. And those of you sitting in front probably heard the noise change a little bit as we changed to a different band and changed to a different mode. And that's because it's, again, the two are talking to each other. And all we've had to do was to start our database, do that one little thing where we set up the ports, and now it does that. If I check to make sure that my power is down, RF power is 5 watts, which is what my dummy load is rated for. We'll go back to 14,066 CW, and we're really going to tempt the demo gods now. I'm going to press the F1 key, because this should be set up so that it can now key the transmitter for me. And so USB. Probably because I'm still in a menu. Okay, got the sound changed. Paul, I'm going to ask you to maybe move your hands back a little bit from that wire that's in front of them, because that's antenna. And so now if I press F4, it should give my call sign. Yeah, well, it was, as I said, we're going to be tempting the demo guides with that one. That should be right. BTR CO. This part is always touchy. It feels like I'm always tweaking this one. Still doesn't want to do it. Well, in theory, and in practice, a lot of the times you can get this working, but this is something that does frequently come up where it just causes a little bit of irritation with most key times. So there have been times where I've been operating mobile, someone's been driving and I'll be in the back trying to operate. Keyer doesn't work, and so I end up just bouncing along in the back seat, pounding it out on a straight key, which is not the most efficient way to do it when you're really bouncing along. But it is really handy to have just F keys. You can M1MM at least will let you record audio for different messages, and then you can use your F keys to invoke those different audio messages. So you can have your CQ message just all keyed in, and you just press the F1 button and it'll call CQ. And then another really handy thing about this is that there is a band map. And so you can get a view of what stations are where in the band. So if I find Kilo Echo Zero Oscar Romeo here, but maybe there's a big pile up for them and I don't manage to work. If I just spin the dial, program what is going on. There it is. Okay. It will recognize that I didn't log it, but it will also put it onto my band map. So that if I then come back to that frequency, it will be like, hey, you said that KE0OR was right here. I can be like, oh, I hear a station here. I bet that's still KE0OR. And so you can use that to just enter enter the call sign that you hear. And if you don't work them, you just spin the dial and you find somebody that you can. These are also color coded. So if I come back here to JT90X and just pressing spacebar here will pull their call sign from the spotted part right into the entry window. So you can just be like, yep, that's the one I hear. You work them. Well, I dialed back to that frequency, but if I click on KE0R, it takes me to that frequency. I then have to press spacebar to pull in the spot information into the entry window. Probably. Yeah, double click will take it and put the information in. Then you log it with enter, and you'll notice that it changes color. So it was red, which was telling me that it was a new country for me on that band and mode. Now it's gray, that means I've worked it on that band and mode. And so when I go off a little bit into here, JT9HF, now it's blue because I can can contact them and they're a new contact for me, but it's not a new country for that abandoned mode.
If you put in JT9DX, what would it?
If I put in JT9DX, oh, Alt W will wipe. So that will take anything that's in there and make it all go away. So if I put in JT9DX, it'll tell me in big red letters, this is a duplicate. You've already worked that station on this abandoned mode. Are you sure you want to work them again? If I'm running, absolutely. I find, at least when I'm contesting, that it is faster to just work the duplicates than to tell them that they're a duplicate and have them figure out that, oh yeah, it's just faster to keep everybody in rhythm than to break it.
And maybe they logged it wrong.
And maybe they logged it wrong the first time. Maybe I logged it wrong the first time.
This way you can get this one contact.
Yep.
You don't get dinged.
And so that's some of the really cool stuff you can do with this. Now, it gets even better because you can also open up what they call the check window. And the check window it's sort of a way to test if that call sign is actually one that you would maybe expect to find in a contest. So if I were to work Lima Zulu 9 Whiskey, that's a really common, really big station in Bulgaria. They're on in all the big contests. Often if I hear Lima Zulu, I'm already just going to type 9 Whiskey and figure it out later if I'm wrong, but usually I'm not. My station isn't big enough to hear most of the rest of the stations in Bulgaria. So it will tell me that that's what I got.
Question for you. What's the little red check mark?
The little red check mark means this is a known call sign, or this is a call sign that is known to be active. If I were to put in Lima Zulu 9 Juliet, it gives me a question mark saying, are you sure that that's the call sign that came in? Because, and again, this is geared toward contesting. So these, this check database is generated off of contest logs. So non-contesters tend not to show up in here. And so it's not saying it's not that. You know, it's not saying that that isn't a valid call sign. It's just saying, huh, that's not one of the usuals. And if you take part in a major contest, you'll probably find 80 to 90% are just the usual suspects.
Is that associated with the check log program that you're running on the website?
Yes. Yep. So this check log window is telling me, well, if maybe you were off by a character, did you mean it was Lima Zulu 7 Juliet? Or maybe the Lima Zulu 9 is right, but are you sure that wasn't Lima Zulu 9 Whiskey? You know, listen again. And so that's a way to help kind of focus you in on, did I get that right, or am I off by a little bit? And again, super helpful to have that there, because it's just another way to say, oh yeah, that's one of the usual suspects, I nailed that call sign, or maybe I need to ask them for their call sign again. The flip side of that is, if you're one of the people who isn't in this database, you learn pretty quickly who's relying on it, because they're the ones who keep asking you over and over, what's your call sign again? You're sending what? So, you know, it is not 100% source. You still have to listen, but it goes a long way. There are also a couple of cases where with some of the really big stations, they get logged incorrectly enough that their incorrect logging shows up in the file. So watch out. do listen. But I think, yeah, I think Kilo Hotel 6 Lima Charlie, yeah, is one of those where they have been logged as Kilo Hotel 7 Lima Charlie enough that it actually shows up in here. I don't think that's an actual real call sign that you're going to hear in a contest. So, we're talking a little bit about contesting and contest logging. What if we actually, this is sort of set up right now for general purpose logging, but if we actually wanted to do a contest like the Minnesota QSO party, we would want to create a new log. And from that, we have to select the type of log. And it's not general logging. It's under Q for QSO party. And is in fact the top option under Q. And then we have, I'll try and get out of the way here. You choose which state or area is your QSO party for. We are Mike November. And it already is sort of asking us in the sent exchange. It's like, hey, what are you going to be sending? So for sent exchange, it says my name, question mark, we're going to put Bill. And my county, we're going to clear that out, and we're going to put Lima Echo Sierra, because I usually operate from Le Sueur. Despite living in Hennepin County, I typically operate in Le Sueur. You can tell it, what category are you entering? So single op, multi-op, check log. Power, I run low power, not high power. Mode, I do both. But if I were doing code only or phone only, you've got a bunch of options here. I'm going to just leave it here at the default. Overlay is used in certain contests. They'll have it so that it will subset in certain ways. Again, with the station type, you've got a bunch of options. Fixed is usually the one that you're looking for, unless you know that you're a mobile or a rover station. See the rules for more information. Assisted and non-assisted. This gets into whether you are only relying on information that comes in via your radio on the contest bands, or if you are including spots that other people may have reported on the internet or other means. I typically run non-assisted, but we're going to leave this as assisted because we're talking about logging and spotting, and we've only got about 12 minutes to go, so we'd better get to our spotting. One transmitter is fine, so we say okay. And when we do that, it tells us that we are in state because my state call sign is US and my section is Minnesota. So, okay, that sounds good. And now you'll notice that we have different fields. So now, if I were Kilo Echo 0 Oscar Romeo, which it tells me is a call sign that it knows about, I can log Dan in Hennepin, and it tells me that Hennepin is a new multiplier for me. Okay, let's log Dan. And then if I move to a different frequency,
Could you just change the band on the radio and move it automatically follow?
on contest, so I better move to a non-marked band. So yeah, now I've moved up. Now I'm on 15 meters, and the program has absolutely followed me. I don't have any spots that are in here. Okay, continuing to tempt the demo gods. Let's see how we're doing. PE7. Too much tempting, apparently. Ooh. Conference team came through for me. how many of you are familiar with the website dxsummit.fi? Okay, about half. dxsummit.fi is a place we go off. You know, I just recently and right now, who's being heard by whom? And I don't know about all of you, but I am still in need of, I think it's what, Whiskey 8 Sierra.
Swains Island.
So if we look for Whiskey 8 Sierra, it tells us that it was last heard about a minute ago on 21.021 and listening up.
The station that spotted them on the left.
So we've got a few that have spotted them. There has been a spot in the US a few minutes ago. Wouldn't it be cool if this would somehow integrate with that band map that we had? You can integrate it directly in N1MM. I generally don't like to do that because I find the filtering that's in VE7CC to be more intuitive to me and more user-friendly. But again, these are little things that I correct. Yep, this is freeware. We'll just leave all the rest of that. So we'll put that 2 THs on N and grid square like in November 4. I realize I'm in 35 right now. The rover is where they say they are. So we set all that, and then we should be able to press the big connect button. It will tell us that we should update our program. You should do that. I'm not going to do it now, but you should do that. And so we can see that W1AW portable 6 was spotted not long ago on 20-meter code. And so we can set which countries we're interested in for spotter country. So maybe I only care about things that were where the station that's spotting is in the US. Because much as it's nice that the station in Japan heard Swains Island, that doesn't help me do much. So I generally keep this limited to the US, but maybe I only want to see spots for Swains Island. So if I do that and I tell the cluster, farewell my previous settings. And then I can come here, I can clear all the spots, I can get all the spots. That did not do quite what I thought it would. Oh, I'm only rejecting Swains Island. Let's try passing Swains Island. That, you know, details. They're all, get all, there we go. So now we're seeing nothing but Swains Island. Generally, you wouldn't want it set to nothing but Swains Island because it's usually. There.
Set it up for a couple of different countries.
Sure. What other countries do we want? Yeah, that's gonna be in Africa, and I'm gonna go with Zulu Delta 9 Whiskey because I know the prefix on that, whereas the Tango Oscars are kind of weird. I don't remember what Mayat is. I know it's one of these French ones, but tell the cluster that. And again, clear it, get all of them. And so it was heard a couple days ago on 17 meters. So I think there is port/logging program. And we want to enable telnet on port 7300. We're going to apply this. And then we're going to allow and it's going to think. Then we're going to come in here. And we can open up the telnet window. We go to our clusters. We make this window bigger. And somewhere in here, there should be. Oh, no. Favorites. Think that's what it is? Connect to. Oh, no, I didn't need to tell it that. Port 7300. Next look. Okay. Now we're going to come back into our country. I am going to take off our take off those. We're going to switch this to reject. We're going to tell the cluster. We're going to then clear all, we're going to get all. And what this should do is we come back and we now have spots coming up on our bend map. And so we can just click around. And if I find Whiskey 3 Delta Zulu Hotel, press space, and I log Bob.
Excuse me, what program did you do?
Yeah, so this is VE7CC's CC user program. Yep, so Victor Echo 7 Charlie Charlie. And CC user is the name of it. Thanks. And it's you'll download it. It will say, hey, this is an old version. That's fine. You download it, and then you click the big red button that says update me. And then it will update to version 3, and life is good, and you're on your merry way.
So you like it in the Summit?
What I like about it is that VE7CC, I can then get talking to M1MM. So what I was just saying over here with this logging window is, if I finish logging Bob in Pennsylvania, I have this right now. It's feeding live spots right here to my band map. So if I head down, actually, was what 21021 was where they were saying that. Turn the lock off. That helps. Yeah. So if I come down here towards 021, it hasn't been spotted in the 3 minutes that we've been listening by a U.S. station in that time. If it does get spotted, we'll know about it. And we are not hearing it on our dummy load.
Yeah. Are these spots that people are making manual entries or is it automated?
Both. So all of these entries up here that you can see that have a number after them, those are from the reverse beacon network. So those are all automated. The ones that just have a straight up call sign are actually, put in by a user.
So if you're working up the courage to start contacting you and start out just by spotting and helping people who are active, you could just be listening and logging the spotting software, help up people who might be also located.
Yeah, so the question was, if you're just getting started, can you just go through with the spotting software, go up and down the band and just spot everybody? Absolutely, especially on phone. There is no automated spotting on phone. And so to the extent that you can help keep everybody's band maps up to date with who's where, that's really helpful and will get you, kind of in the flow. And maybe if you don't have HF privileges, but you want to kind of get started towards HF contesting, you can receive. And so you set it up for receive, and you just go up and down the band and listen to somebody else making contact and log it in there for yourself in sort of a test logging. I would keep that separate from my real logs, but log it in there. And when you put your spotting at the end, you can use Control P will spot the last, either the station that you have typed out in your entry window or the last station you worked if your entry window is clear. And that will spot that station. And so it will send that to the cluster, which dxsummit.fi is just sort of a web front end to the same thing that VE7CC is doing.
Could you run them both at the same time? Could you run VE7CC?
Yeah, I mean, I've got that going right now.
DX7 is a web.
Yeah, DX7 is web only, and so you can be using this to watch specifically for Whiskey 8 Sierra. And then,
them on that, but that wasn't.
yeah, so you can just spot stuff directly from N1MF, which is really handy. The other thing to note though about spotting, right? If you're doing it manually, be sure about the call. And also work first, spot second, particularly if they're fairly rare. You don't necessarily have to remember that from me telling you, because when you do it wrong the first time, you won't do it wrong the second time. So, I'll tell you to not, work first, spot second, but yeah, that's kind of how that works. See, how are we doing on time? Oh, I have run over. So but the good news is that was about the demo that I was kind of aiming for. So we started a new log in N1MM. We at least mostly hooked up rig control. The CW keying is being a pain. We got VE7CC. We did some filtering there. We got that integrated in N1MM. We can do our band map fun. Yes, Peter.
If I'm going to more obscure contests, like I do Feld sprints, for example, that's not in N1MM, is there a way to sort of do a manual entries, like contest fields, or upload a contest?
Yeah, so there is support for what they call user-defined contests. And in fact, I think there's a user-defined Parks on the Air format. So it's not a officially supported N1MM contest definition, but there are some unofficial ones that are out there and you can build them, or you might find that there's a different one that's effectively the same. I know that a lot of the VHF sprints that happen are like just use the June VHF scoring methods and call it a day, so that you don't need so many different contests to score. So oh, and sorry, we missed the most important part. Once you're done, There is both a generate Cabrillo file, which is useful if you're contesting, because that's the contest log submission log. If you're submitting to a contest, you can actually take that log and put that into Logbook of the World directly, or you can export to ADIF either your whole log or an incremental log by date. You can do that either for this particular contest log that you have, or you can do it for all contests. So if you had a weekend where you were doing all, 3 different contests from one place, at the end of the weekend, you just upload all of them. So, and all of that taken together can really make a difference in being able to enjoy ham radio, making a lot of the stuff that was hard a lot easy, and taking a lot of work off of you as an operator, so that you're just worrying about the big button or the 2 big buttons and getting the call signs.
One quick question.
Yeah. Yes. The red ones are new DXC.
In the logging.
Oh, in the logging window? Yeah, that is going to be that comes back to to that check, and it's saying that that's not a, what is that? Yeah, it's not a,
That contest is that.
yeah, although that one's kind of weird because it is a recognized call somewhere else. But it's definitely an alert to just, are you sure about that? Yeah.
The yellow box, you mean?
Yeah, that yellow box.
That what meant that it was valid. Because I see that all the time in a contest. You sure that you don't have it inverse?
I'm sure, because
Yeah.
K0BBC is absolutely a contester. And,
Well, yeah, sure.
but if I put in K0F, who I know is a contester,
Sure. Usually out of the country though. All around.
yeah. Yeah, I'm not entirely, it's usually are you sure about that call sign?
Still in general law.
Yeah, that,
Yeah.
there is actually good documentation for N1MM. So if I read up on it, it's probably in there, but then I'd have to read the manual, and that's like, it's a lot of work.
That's the worst case scenario.
Quite a mean.
Yeah, I don't deal with like reading things that are that long. I need like a call sign, signal report, and like a state. And anything that's longer than like 15 characters, like that's just too much. So, all right, well, thanks folks, and